Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cristina, and I am an associate lecturer of English in the School of Policy Studies at Gafmin University. And today I'm going to tell you about a creative writing course that I have introduced in my university's EAP program. So before I do that, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the School of Policy Studies. This school consists of 5 departments. These are education, urban studies, media studies, policy studies, and international policy studies. The courses in these departments are offered mainly in English and also English and Japanese hybrid courses. So to prepare the students for this challenge, all incoming students have to take part in a 2-year EAP program, which is very rigorous and is also very highly coordinated. So the course that I created is part of this EAP program. This is an elective course that is aimed at second-year students. And the goal of these elective courses within this EAP program is to build on the core skills that students are taught in the EAP program from a clear perspective. So my course is a creative writing course. However, the main goal is to help students engage with extensive reading in a more meaningful manner. So why extensive reading? According to many studies in the academic literature, extensive reading has shown to be associated with gains in vocabulary acquisition, writing skills, grammar, test performance, and reading competency. Some studies have shown that extensive reading could be superior to intensive reading. And for university students who are repeaters, extensive reading has been shown to have a significant positive effect on motivation. In 2015, Nobuko Sakurai of Kyoto Zangyo University has shown that students who read more than 70,000 words have less of a tendency to engage in translation while reading. So for Japanese students, because of the way they have been taught to approach reading in English in junior and senior high school, most Japanese students tend to see reading in English as a translation exercise, not as a flowing process. So extensive reading is basically reading for pleasure. Students should be reading a lot of easy books that are at or slightly below their level, and they should have the freedom to select books according to their interests. In 2002, Day and Bamford conducted a meta-study of the academic literature, and they have come up with 10 principles for what constitutes a successful extensive reading program. When I created my elective course, my main concern was with principle number 5, which states that the purpose of reading should be related to pleasure, information, and general understanding. In my experience in this EAP program and at other universities where I have taught reading, I found that this pleasure factor tends to be ignored. And this is mainly due to the fact that we have to have some way of assessing students' progress with extensive reading. So students see reading as a task, something they have to do. They usually have a target number of words that they have to read. This is tied to scores or pass-fail. Sometimes in order to prevent or combat cheating, a large number of books are actually assigned by teachers, so students don't always have the freedom of selecting the books that they want to read. They also have to take quizzes on M-Reader or X-Reading. As I said before, students tend to see reading as a translation exercise. And also because they have to take a lot of difficult tests, such as the TOEIC or the TOEFL, students tend to think that reading should be a source of a resource for them to learn difficult academic vocabulary that they could use for the TOEFL, for the TOEIC. So they tend to select books that are challenging. They don't see the value of reading books that are easy. So these are some of the challenges that are sort of an obstacle for students to see extensive reading as a pleasurable activity. I wanted to avoid this when I created my course. And at this point, I'm going to digress a little bit and tell you about my own personal experience with extensive reading. Basically, I want to tell you how I taught myself to speak French using extensive reading, although I wasn't aware of that at the time. So I grew up in Romania, and one of the joys of growing up in a bleak communist regime was that we had access to these French socialist comic books. However, when we were young, many of us could not speak French. Luckily for me, my mother was a French teacher, and she had access to these comic books. This made me very popular with my classmates. So after school, every evening, I would always come back home with a large group of children and would harass my poor mother to read to us from these comic books. And my mom was, of course, too busy. So she just gave us a French dictionary and she said, well, why don't you figure it out? So my friends and I, we would spend a lot of time poring over every word in those cartoon bubbles and checking in the dictionary. And this is how I began to start reading in French. And this is a habit that I continued up to today. So why am I telling you this story? Basically because I think this showcases the importance of aesthetics in reading. So for a young child, aesthetics in reading could be quirky characters, funny storyline, colorful illustrations. But what do aesthetics in reading mean for adult learners? So at this point, I'd like to read to you a quote from Dr. Kuzmikova, who is a cognitive behavioral psychologist and also a literary scholar. Defined as vicarious sensory motor experiencing, mental imagery is a powerful source of aesthetic enjoyment in everyday life, and reportedly, one of the commonest things readers remember about literary narratives in the long term. Furthermore, it is positively correlated with other dimensions of reader response, most notably with emotion. Dr. Kuzmikova's studies, among other things, call into question the way that we are assessing extensive reading with quizzes designed to check that students remember factual information. But for me, I wanted to create a source of aesthetic enjoyment based on emotion using creative writing. So my idea was that I wanted to introduce this sense of aesthetics through creative writing by making students aware of certain writing techniques and by using the text that the students are reading as resources or examples for how to apply these techniques in their own writing. So my idea was that by teaching students how to be better writers, we're also teaching them how to be better, or rather more critical readers. So some of the creative writing skills that I teach in this class are how to use sensory verbs, how to understand color symbolism, how inference skills can be used to create suspense, how to develop characters and dialogue, and also how to write from a third perspective. And because I want to create this connection between writing and reading, every time that the students are learning about one of these techniques, we're always referring to the books that they're reading and trying to find examples of these techniques in the reading itself. So for example, when I teach sensory verbs, I always ask the students to look for examples of sensory verbs within their writing, within their text that they are reading. So in regular classes, each lesson would start with 15 to 20 minutes of sustained silent reading. We would try to create a relaxed atmosphere. We would have music playing in the background. The tables would be arranged so that students are sitting in small groups facing each other. I would be reading with them. And to keep track of their reading, I wanted to avoid the assessments in their usual reading courses, which are quizzes on mReader or quizzes created by the teacher. So instead of that, I've chosen to give them weekly book progress reports with a series of questions that I have created myself to check that they are indeed reading the books. Also, we would have book conferences. This would be activities that would vary from week to week, activities that would give the students a chance to share what they were reading, as well as their opinion about the book itself. At the end of the semester, the students would give me a reading log that kept track of their entire reading for the whole semester. And of course, because this is a writing course, there would be short weekly writing assignments that would culminate in a short story at the end of the semester. So some of the problems that I was anticipating were how to keep track of the students' reading and how to prevent and combat cheating, which is a big problem with the regular reading courses in the EAP program. So my solution was to use my research budget and create my own graded reader library. I made sure to select only books of fiction because those would be the most useful books for a creative writing course. I tried to select books across all levels from beginner to advanced readers. And I made sure that they were not books that they would have previously had access to in the library or for their other reading courses, and also books that were not based on movies. This was a lot of work for me. And also, once I created this collection of books, I made sure that I read most of them myself. So if I had any suspicion that some of the students were trying to cheat, I could have a conversation with them personally and figure out very quickly if they had or had not read the book. So this graded library collection was put on reserve for my course only, and students were instructed to select books only from this collection. For the higher level students, they could also bring regular works of fiction that they wanted to read in English with my permission. So we had students who were reading Sidney Sheldon or Harry Potter, and for some students that was fine. Of course, in spring of 2020, due to Corona, the course had to be moved online. And instead of the books from the library, we selected X-Reading. This was a great tool. It gave us access to a wider library that the students could use. And it also made it much easier for me to keep track of my students' reading. The lessons were mainly asynchronous lessons, and they took place on Blackboard. The great benefit of using Blackboard for writing was that it's a great platform for students to do peer review. This is because it provided anonymity. So students in regular classes tend to be a little bit guarded about their comments on their classmates' writing. However, on Blackboard, it provided perfect anonymity, and students' constructive criticism was a lot better than in regular classes. Also, I made YouTube videos instead of the lecture, and I provided captions, and this gave the lower level students a great chance to keep up with the lecture rather than sitting in a live lesson. The problem with asynchronous lessons was that we couldn't really engage in the book conference discussions. It was also very difficult for me to gauge students' overall understanding. At the beginning of the semester, I gave all the students a survey about their reading habits. And this is a brief profile of the students who took this class. Only 25% of them enjoy reading in English. And the reasons they gave for not reading in English is that they had no time, they found it too difficult, or that they just hate reading altogether. 10% of students said that they enjoy reading in English or Japanese. I'm sorry, 10% said that they do not enjoy reading in English or Japanese. And 65% of the students said that they enjoy reading in Japanese. At the end of the semester, I gave the students another survey, and the results were very encouraging. It turns out that 83% of students enjoyed reading the books in my class. 91% of students reported that learning creative writing helped them to enjoy reading more. 70% of students said that learning creative writing helped them to understand what they read. And 62% of students said that they will continue reading after the course ended. And this is a semester-long course. So the X reading card that we bought for the students is actually for a year-long membership. So it's very easy for me to verify this last statement. So just before I recorded this presentation, I checked the X reading site, and about half of the class are still continuing to read Annex reading, about 5,000 to 6,000 words on average per week. So this was very encouraging for me. Thank you so much for your time today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or please feel free to ask me now. Thank you.